Okay. It says find the value of x. So from yesterday, how do we set this one up?
2 times 8 and x times x plus 3. What?
So it's 2 times
8.
6 because it's inside, yeah. You don't do the adding one unless it's outside, yeah? He had you do it. And then we'll do 3 times x, right? Or x times 3. There we go. And 6 times 2 is 12 equals 3x. So x has the value of 4. All right. So if you ever are unsure, make sure you use your formula chart. All right, 10.8. The last thing we talk about in this chapter is the equations of circles. So let's just talk about the circle in general on the coordinate plane. To graph a circle, you have to know 2 things. You have to know the center of the circle, which is here, which is at HK. And then you have to know a point on the circle. That'll give you at least the distance from the center to that point to create the radius, right? Because once you have that distance, you can go from that center and take your distance and then make another point. Center, take your distance, make another point, and then keep going to create your circle, right? Because that's the definition of a circle. All these points are equidistant to the center. Now, what they did here is they used the distance formula to find the radius. All right, so they use a given point which is your x and y. So here we have x and y. And then the h and k, these represent your center. Now, all they did to create this is the formula we use for the equation of a circle, is they just got rid of the square root. What's the opposite of square rooting something? Squaring. So all they did was square both sides, and that square remained here for the r, but over here, what happened is the square and the square root, they canceled out. So all you were left with was whatever was inside, okay? Now that's the formula we use to get the equation of a circle, to know the radius and to know the center, and then x and y represent any point on your circle, all right? So here it tells you what the variables are. So h and k are your center, x and y are any point, and then r is the radius. So if I'm just asking you to write an equation, we're just plugging it in. So let me come down to the equation. All right, so I'm going to come through. I'm going to just write the equation. I'm going to say x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, right? And if we go through with the information, the center represents h and k, and the radius is r. So all we're going to do is plug all this in. So here I would have x minus, what's our h? 1 squared plus y minus, what's our k squared? -8. And then our radius is 7 squared. Now, to officially call this the equation of a circle, all you have to do is clean everything up, everything you can possibly do. Now, can I do anything with x minus 1? No, so you leave it the way it is. Can I do anything with y minus a -8? Yeah, the double negative becomes a positive, so this becomes y plus 8 instead. Can I do anything with 7 squared? Can I square it? Yeah, it's 49. And this is the equation of the circle, okay? So you have to have the radius, you have to have your center. That'll give us the equation of a circle. X and y represent any point on the circle, so those are going to remain x and y. All right, let's come over here to this one. So same idea here. What do we need to know? We need to know the center, and we need to know the radius. All right, these are the 2 things we have to know. So do we know the center of the circle? It's 0, 4, okay? Do we know the radius? No. All right, so what I want you to do is pick any point and then try to count to that point. Now in this case, you can go up or down, left or right. Pick any one, and then you're just gonna count the distance to that point. Do you want to go up, down, left or right? Bless you. Up. All right, so we're just gonna count the units up. So from the center, you're just going to count units up. So you're going to count 1, 2, 3. So our radius is 3 units. You can go left or right. Doesn't matter. If I wanted to go right instead, I'd count 1, 2, 3 would still be 3 units. Or down or to the left. All right, and then once you have this, we're going to write out the equation. The x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. All right. And then we plug everything in. What should the inside of the first parentheses read? I should have x minus Reminder, this is your h and this is your k. So what's going to be my h? 0 squared, and then y minus 4 squared equals 3 squared. All right, can I do anything with x minus 0? You can leave it as x. Yeah, you don't have to, don't put the 0. It's x squared. All right, can I do anything with y minus 4? No. So leave that one the way it is. Can I do anything with 3 squared? It becomes what? 9. Okay, then that's your official answer. All right, so don't put the zeros, because if you see it like this and I want you to figure out the center, I need you to know that there is a 0 there. Okay. All right, so then the bottom one says, what are the center and radius of the circle? Okay, so great way to lead into that one. All right, so we have x minus h. All I'm doing is writing the formula at the bottom. Y minus k equals r squared. All right, what do I have in place of h? 3. Some of you see it, already know what the answer is going to be, and that's fine. If we don't, you're going to say, okay, negative h is 3 right now. How do I make that a positive h? What do I have to do? Divide by negative 1. So your h value is negative 3. All right, do the same thing with your k. We have negative 7 equals negative k. I want that to be a positive k, so what do I have to divide by? Negative 1. So k has the value of 7. All right, so these are your answers. So your center, where's your center located at? What would the center be? You do h and k. What's our h? Negative 3, 7. Okay, all you do is put them in order. H first, and then the k. All right, now, before I go on to the radius, you notice that your h, what was our answer? Negative 3? It's just the opposite of what was in there. Instead of a positive 3, it's a negative 3. Instead of a negative 7, we pulled out a positive 7. Or you can do it this way, right? If you forget, just write your equation underneath and set them equal. Now, for the radius, r squared is equal to what? R squared is equal to 25. How do I get that r by itself? Square root it. So r is equal to 5. And there are your two answers. All right, when you're ready, we'll go over to the right side. So on the right side, I'm going to have you do both. Same ones we did, right? So you're going to do, given the center and the diameter, not the radius, I want you to write me the equation. And then given the picture, can you figure out the equation for that one? So let me give you a few minutes to try those. So on that first one, I noticed that a lot of us use 12, but not a lot of us. A few of us use 12. But reminder, the formula calls for the radius. Has to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So given that the diameter is 12, what is the radius? Should be 6, right? Dividing that by 2 should give us 6. All right, so then for the center, Caden, how did you plug this in? What did you get? You got x minus 3? Mm-hmm. Finish reading it to me.
Oh.
Squared.
Squared plus y plus 3.
Okay, so that's your h, that's your k. So y minus a negative 3 squared equals, what would you, 6 squared, good. So then when you cleaned it up, because you were already giving me that answer, what would your final answer be?
X minus 3 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals 36.
36, good. All right, and then for the one on the right, Rogelio, what did you get on that one? What's your center here?
1, 3.
1, 3, everyone get 1, 3 for the center? Okay, and then for the radius, what did you get?
2.
Where everyone get 2 for the radius? Good. All right, so then for your final answer, what did you get for the equation there?
X minus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 4.
You said equals 4? Okay, should be 4. All right, any questions on that one? None? Okay. All right, let's come down to this one. Let me go and take that one off. All right, so on example 3, it says, write the equation of a circle with the center of negative 2, 4 that passes through this point. What did we not give you on this example? The radius. So what do you think we're going to do to figure out the radius? If we look at the formula carefully, this equals the radius squared. Do we have the h and the k? Yes, what is it? Negative 2 and 4, good. Do we have an x and a y? Remember, x and y are any point that that circle touches. Negative 6 and 7, good, that's your x and y. So we're gonna go ahead and plug those in now. That should give us the radius. So this is our first step. So I'm gonna put a little 1 up here to indicate that's our first step. All right, so we're gonna do x is negative 6 minus, what's our h? Negative 2 squared plus, what's our y value? 7 minus 4. Squared should give us the radius squared. All right, so negative and a negative is going to make that a positive. So what's negative 6 plus 2? Negative 4 squared. 7 minus 4? 3 squared. All right, someone just gave me the negative 4 squared. What was that? 16. And 3 squared is 9 equals r squared. So what's 16 plus 9? 25. So then the radius has to be 5. All right, I want you to keep these two in mind though. This is r squared and this is r. Okay, so the bottom one said, what's the radius? The radius is 5. We got that one answered. All right, so now for step 2, we're gonna actually find the equation of the circle. For the equation of the circle, this is what we had been doing. You're just gonna plug in the h, the k, and the r. So I'm gonna start off with that formula again, just so that it's clean. All right, so what am I gonna plug in? What would I write next on my next line?
X plus 2 squared.
Plus minus 4 squared equals, do we know what r squared is? 25. Now, right now, y'all could have said, Ms. Kranza, we know what 5 squared is. We don't have to necessarily do it right now. You're right. But if there's ever a decimal, so that you don't have to round it, y'all can just put in that whole number. All right, double negative, we'll change it to a positive, right? And I know some of you can go straight there, and I'm okay with that. If you want to go straight there, seeing that double negative, and then this would be our final answer. So this one has 2 steps because you have to figure out the radius first, and then use that to get the official equation of the circle. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna have you guys try one with the exact same steps. All right, so our point should be the x and y. Our center should be h and k. First formula should be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. All right, Ireland, what did you plug into this one? Okay, and then the double negatives all turn into positives. So negative 1 plus 3 gave us 4 squared. What about negative 2 plus 2? 0 squared, and then r squared, right? So this should have just been 16 equals r squared. So our radius came out to be what? 4. All right, so then that was step 1. Then we go to step 2. On step 2, Jessica, what did you plug into this one? Good, and then what was your final answer?
X plus 3 squared plus y plus 2 squared
Equals 16. All right, everyone agree with that one? We're all good? All right, so let's go ahead and look at that bottom one. The bottom one says, if you can't remember the distance formula, is there another way to determine the radius of a circle? Well, keep in mind that first picture. That first picture, I had the radius. I had a point here, which was your xy. Then I had the center, which was HK. If this is on a coordinate plane, you can always create a right triangle. Well, it would be touching our circle. And then you can find your X and your Y. and then set it equal to the r squared. So you could do x squared plus y squared equals r squared. You could also, let's see if y'all remember the parent function from Algebra 1. If not, it's okay because I'm here. All right, it says graph the circle with the equation that has x minus 4 squared, y plus 1 squared equals 9. What would the center be? If I write x minus h squared, let me just write in case y'all need it. For those that may need it. If I have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, what would the h and k be? Positive 4 and, good, positive 4, negative 1, this would be the center. All right, what would the radius be? 3. Okay, so you're going to graph it. You're going to graph 4, negative 1, so that's going to be your center. And the 3, you're just going to make 4 points. You're going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, make a point. Go to the right, 1, 2, 3, make a point. 1, 2, 3 going down, 1, 2, 3 going left. And then you're going to do your best just to make a circle. It's okay if it's not perfect, but just connect them to make your circle. All right, and that's you graphing the circle. Now on the next one, your practice won't be like this, but I do want to just kind of show you guys. Next one says, find the point of intersection between x squared plus y squared equals 4 squared. What would the center be? Right, this is supposed to be x minus h squared. And then y minus k squared. And that's supposed to be r squared. What do I have in place of the h and k here? Well, the squared's there. The squared's part of the equation. 0. Your center is going to be 0. There's nothing attached to it, so your center is 0, right? Because if there's a 0, we don't put it. So your center is at 0, 0. What would the radius be? 2, because you have to square root that last number. Your radius is 2. All right, so go ahead and graph that one at 0, 0. And then let's do 2 up, 2 down, 2 left, 2 right. Okay. Do you remember what y equals x equal looks like, the linear parent function? Okay, if you don't, it's okay. It's the perfect line that goes through the origin and hits every point with the same numbers. So it hits at 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, and so forth. Same way in the other order. So negative 2, negative 2, negative 3, and so forth. So go ahead and graph that one for me, or just sketch it at least. Make sure you put your arrows to indicate that that's a line. Okay. The question is, find the point of intersections. So I want you to look at where it's hitting. Do we know exactly where those points are? No, right? It's in between. So the way to do this is we're going to substitute in. I'm going to do my work over here so that y'all can see it. We're going to substitute in the y for the x and the x for the y in two separate problems, okay? So I'm going to have, first step is I'm going to take the x squared plus y squared equals 4, and I'm going to plug in the x for the y. So instead of writing y, because they're equal, instead of writing y, I'm going to put a x. So I'm going to put x squared plus x squared equals 4. How many x squares do we have? 2. All right, I have to get the x by itself, so what would I do next? How would I get rid of the 2? Not yet. Divide by 2 first. First divide by 2. That's going to give us x squared equals 2. Now we want to do the square root. All right, so x is equal to positive 2, positive square root of 2, whatever the decimal may be. It's, I think, 1.4 something. And then negative square root of 2, right? Because we know a negative times a negative is still a positive. So it could be a negative or a positive. Those are my possibilities. All right. Second step. Take the same formula, but this time, instead of writing the x, I'm going to replace it with the y because they're equal. Again, we're only doing this because they're equal. So I'm plugging one formula in for the other. The steps are going to be the same. Okay? Y squared plus y squared, how many do we have? 2 y squares. Then we divide. y is equal to, squared is equal to 2, and then we have to take the square root. So then you square root both. Y is equal to positive square root of 2, and then the negative square root of 2. All right, so now we have to figure out those points. If you look at this point here, the x is a positive or negative? Positive, right? The x is a positive. What would the y be? Positive. So this point is hitting at the positive square root of 2 and the positive square root of y. So this point is at square root of 2, square root of 2. Whatever those decimals are. All right, we're just keeping it as a square root. And if you look at this next one, the one down here at the bottom, this one has a negative x and then a negative y. Well, we have a negative square root of 2 and a negative square root of 2. Okay? All right, I won't give you one of these on the test. All right? All right, so y'all don't have to worry about it. But I do want to expose y'all to it so that y'all can see that we can take that one equation, plug it into the other, and figure out where these intersections are. Now, I'm going to have you graph this one the same way we did. This one, I want you to graph it. You're graphing y equals 2. So let me see if y'all remember what this looks like, because we did this back in chapter 9, where we were reflecting over these lines. So let me just see if y'all can do those two, okay? So let me give you a few minutes to do those two. So first line, Zane, what was your center on that first line? On the first problem? 0, positive 3, right? So if there's no number, there's a 0. Remember, just take out the opposite, or you can set that equal to negative k and then solve from there. And what was your radius? 5. Square root of 25, the radius is 5. So 0, 3 is your center. Then we go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, and then we just try to make our circle there, okay? All right, next one. Paxton, what's your center on the next one, Paxton? 0, 0. All right, so our center 0, 0. What was your radius? 2. So up 2, right 2, down 2, left 2. All right, so your radius was 2. I saw a few of us graphing the same line we did above. They are two different lines, okay? So let me just kind of highlight those real quick. This line is y equals x. This one is y equals 2. They're two different lines. All right, a few of us did graph this correctly. Those of us that graphed it and did not graph it like the top one, what axis did it have to go through? The y-axis. The y-axis at what number? At the 2. So right here at the 2, and this is more like what your test would be like, you're going to graph your line, and you just tell me where the point of intersection is. Where's the point of intersection? At 0, 2. That would be your answer. Okay? All right, last thing. Last one says, what is the center of circle T if its diameter has the endpoints of negative 3, 4, and 5, 0? All right, so let me just kind of draw this. I'm going to sketch it. The numbers may not be in the right quadrants, but I'm just going to sketch it. All right, one point is at negative 3, 4, right? Because this is the diameter, and these are the endpoints. The other point, it says it's at 5, 0. The question is, what is the center? Close. She wants to divide them both by 2, but we can't just divide them by 2. We have to add them first and then divide by 2. Do you remember what that's called? The midpoint. You take your 2 x's, divide it by 2. Take your 2 y's, divide it by 2, and that does give you the center point. That's all it is. All right, so what do we want to call x1? 5? Okay, so then let's do 5 plus negative 3, divided by 2. And then what's our y's then? 0 plus 4 divided by 2. All right, what's 5 plus negative 3? 2 over 2. What's 0 plus 4? 4 over 2, and that changes to be? 1, 2. This is your center. All right, I do not have the midpoint formula on your formula chart. So if you were to have one like this, you'd have to try your best to remember the formula. So make a note of it somewhere, okay?